I can't stand Aria anymore. She's nothing but a burden. Honestly, I wish she'd been buried under the rubble of that earthquake years ago. It would have saved us all the trouble. Right? Celeste's voice dripped with satisfaction as she leaned closer to Damon, eyes glimmering with mischief. Can you believe she actually tried to compete with me for your heart? She never learns. Damon chuckled coldly, his lips curling into a sneer. She's delusional. After everything we've done for her, she should be grateful we even let her stay under the same roof. People like her should know their place. Hidden in the dim corridor, I stood frozen. Their voices cut through me sharper than glass. I had come here to deliver a report, a document that could have changed everything. But instead, I found the truth that shattered what little remained of my world. My fingers trembled as I looked down at the critical condition notice in my hand. The words blurred through the tears that refused to fall. 10 years ago, I had thrown myself into a collapsing building to pull Damon to safety. I'd thought that act of courage had meaning, that it was love. If I'd known what kind of man he truly was, I would never have risked my life, and I would never have carried his child. All those years convincing myself that he loved me. What a cruel lie, but it didn't matter anymore, not now, because I was running out of time. Celeste suddenly wobbled on her feet, her complexion paling. Damon, she murmured weakly. Instantly he panicked. Celeste, hold on! Don't move! He scooped her up and hurried toward the ward. My parents, who had been waiting nearby, rushed over as well. Doctor, please, my daughter isn't feeling well again, my mother pleaded. After a quick examination, the doctor assured them it was nothing serious. Relief washed over their faces like a tide. That was when they noticed me, still standing quietly in the corner of the hallway. Damon's eyes fell on the envelope in my hand. His voice turned cold. What did the doctor say about you? I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Everything's fine. He sighed as if the weight of the world was his to bear. You know how things were back then. Celeste was in danger. I didn't have a choice. You wouldn't have wanted her to die, right? My mother gave me a disapproving glare. Aria, don't start again. You always make things harder than they have to be. Celeste is your sister. Try acting like it. My father's expression hardened. We've had enough of your attitude. Ever since you came back, this family hasn't had a moment's peace. You argue with Celeste over everything, and now you're upset about this? Grow up, Aria. Then came the smallest voice, the one that hurt the most. Bad mommy. Noah, my 5-year-old son, charged toward me with tears streaming down his cheeks. He hit my stomach with his tiny fists, his voice breaking. It's your fault Aunt Celeste is sick. I don't want you anymore. I want her to be my mom. His words hit harder than any slap. For a moment, everything went silent. The world tilted slightly as I steadied myself against the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just smiled faintly through the pain. I'm not angry, I whispered. The doctor said we'll get good news in 7 days. I looked at each of them, my husband, my family, my son, and felt an odd sense of calm settle over me. It'll be good news for everyone, I said softly. You'll see. And as I turned away, the report in my hand crumpled slightly. Its final line marked in bold. Terminal, 7 days remaining. A heavy silence filled the hospital room before it finally lifted. The air that had been thick with tension suddenly felt lighter. Damon exhaled slowly, relief softening the hard lines of his face. See? I told you, he said gently, brushing a stray hair from Celeste's forehead. Your heart's been fragile for nearly 2 decades, but it's stable. You're strong, Celeste. You'll make it through this. Celeste's lips curved faintly into a tired smile. You always say that? And I'll keep saying it, he murmured, his tone unusually tender. My father stood beside them, pride swelling in his chest as he tucked the blanket around her shoulders. Our sweet Cece really is the family's blessing, he said warmly. If it weren't for her, this family would have fallen apart long ago. We're lucky she's still with us. Just 7 more days until the new heart arrives. My mother, ever the vigilant guardian, sliced an apple and handed it to Celeste before glancing sharply at me. Her disapproval was almost tangible. "Some people should take notes from their sister," she said coldly. "Instead of causing scenes at the hospital and dragging our family name through the mud, maybe they should learn how to show gratitude." I didn't reply. My hands rested quietly in my lap, the hospital wristband still digging into my skin. Damon's gaze flickered toward me, briefly, uncertainly, and for a fleeting second I thought I saw guilt in his eyes. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Mom, Dad, please, let's not argue about this right now." My heart skipped. That one sentence, those 5 words, felt like a lifeline. I looked up, hope trembling in my chest. "But then came the knife," he added. "We shouldn't let small things affect Cece's recovery." The hope vanished as quickly as it came. A bitter laugh escaped my throat before I could stop it. Small things. Of course. My pain, my humiliation, my son's rejection. Those were all small things compared to Celeste's comfort. Every ounce of affection he had ever shown me had always been meant for her. I had just been standing in the way. Trying to compose myself, I reached for the bowl of candies on the table and crouched beside my son. "Noah," I said softly, offering him the sweets. "Do you really want Aunt Celeste to be your mom?" He hesitated only for a moment before nodding, his little eyes wide and serious. Once, I would have scolded him for eating too much sugar. I used to worry about his teeth, his sleep, his habits, every little thing. I thought that was what a mother did, but maybe to him, it only made me the villain in his story. I smiled faintly, stroking his hair one last time. "All right then," I whispered. "From now on, Celeste will be your mother." The room went still. Even Celeste's breathing seemed to stop for a second. Then, almost in unison, the others started murmuring their approval. "Finally, she understands," my mother said with relief. "It's about time she grew up," my father added. I didn't bother to respond. Their words washed over me like distant waves I no longer had the strength to fight. Quietly, I turned and walked out of the ward. Deep down, I knew I didn't belong there anymore, and if I stayed even a minute longer, Celeste would probably faint again, and everyone would point their fingers at me. By the time I reached home, exhaustion had swallowed me whole. My steps were heavy, my vision dim. But what greeted me at the door drained the last bit of warmth from my chest. Damon was already there, standing at the foot of the stairs, instructing Maggie, the housemaid, to clear out the master bedroom. My clothes were scattered on the floor, trampled and wrinkled beyond recognition. Even my undergarments had been tossed aside carelessly, stained with something I didn't want to identify. "Make sure Cece's things go in first," Damon ordered, his voice calm and resolute. "She just had surgery and she needs to rest somewhere comfortable. I'll stay in the guest room next door to keep an eye on her." For a long moment I simply stared at him, unable to decide whether to laugh or cry. Maggie gave me a disdainful once-over, her lip curling. "You heard him, Mrs. Reed. Or should I say, Miss Aria. The master bedroom's for the real lady of the house now." She chuckled and gestured toward the end of the hall. "You can take the utility room. That should be cozy enough for someone like you." I met her mocking gaze without emotion. "Fine," I said simply. She blinked, momentarily taken aback. Normally I would have snapped back, but tonight I didn't have the strength. It took me nearly 5 hours to move my things. Each trip up and down the stairs made my head spin, my body weaker. By the time I placed the last box on the floor of the utility room, my hands were shaking. The room smelled of dust and damp wood. The narrow bed was covered in an old sheet, the kind that had long lost its color. I collapsed onto it, too tired to even take off my shoes. For a brief moment, I thought I heard the echo of Noah's laughter from the next room, the kind of laughter that used to fill my heart with warmth. Now, it only hollowed me out further. As the heaviness of sleep began to pull me under, the door suddenly slammed open with a violent thud. A shadow loomed over me. "Aria, my wounds won't heal on their own. Go make me some soup." Celeste's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Before I could even lift my head, one of the servants grabbed my arm and pulled me up from the narrow bed. My body ached, but I didn't resist. I remembered too clearly what had happened the last time I refused her. That night, they made me kneel on a floor covered with shattered glass, forcing me to bow again and again until my forehead bled. I had apologized until I could no longer speak, and still, it hadn't been enough. So this time I just nodded. All right. I stumbled toward the kitchen, the cold tiles pressing through the thin soles of my slippers. My reflection in the window looked ghostly. Hollow eyes, pale lips, and hands that trembled even when they weren't moving. The first pot of soup boiled too long. When I brought it to her, Celeste frowned, then slapped me so hard that stars flashed in my vision. "Are you trying to burn me alive?" she screamed. I said nothing. I simply turned and went back to the stove. The second time, she took a spoonful, grimaced dramatically, and hurled the utensil at me. It hit my forehead with a sharp crack, and blood trickled down into my eyebrow. "Do you want me dead from all this salt?" Still, I said nothing. By the third attempt, I could barely keep my balance. My hands shook as I poured the chicken broth into her bowl. Then suddenly, Celeste let out a shrill scream and flung the bowl away. Hot soup splashed onto her wrist. Within seconds, Damon came running from the next room. "Celeste, what happened?" He wrapped his arms around her protectively, his voice trembling with concern. Celeste's lashes fluttered, and her eyes welled with tears. "I don't know. Maybe Aria's angry with me. I keep trying to be kind, but she sniffled, glancing at me timidly. "She hates me, Damon. Maybe she hasn't forgiven me for the transplant." I stared at her, unable to believe how easily lies fell from her lips. Damon turned to me, fury blazing in his eyes. "If you enjoy wasting food that much, you can go hungry tonight." The words hit harder than any slap. That evening, the kitchen was empty. The lights were dim. My stomach growled painfully, but I ignored it. Instead, I turned on the faucet and cupped my hands beneath the cold water, drinking straight from the tap like a stray animal. The icy water hit my throat, but then, sharp pain. It stabbed through my chest, spreading fast, leaving me gasping for air. I clutched my heart and sank to the floor, coughing violently until I tasted iron. Blood stained the white tiles, and the metallic smell filled the air. When the pain finally dulled, I cleaned the floor quietly, erasing every trace. Then I dragged myself back to the utility room and collapsed onto the bed. When I woke, someone was sitting beside me. Damon. He was dabbing a cool towel against my forehead, his expression tight with worry. For a moment, it almost felt like years ago, before the lies, before Celeste. "Why didn't you tell me you had a fever?" he asked softly. "What would Noah and I do if something happened to you?" His words sounded sincere, almost tender. He even placed a small bandage on the cut above my eyebrow and blew gently, as if I were made of glass. My chest tightened. The warmth of that gesture, the care I had once longed for, felt like salt on a wound that could never heal. But just as quickly as it came, the moment shattered. The housekeeper burst in, panic in her voice. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Langford isn't feeling well again. Please come at once." Without hesitation, Damon dropped the towel, stood, and hurried out the door. The silence that followed was deafening. I laughed bitterly under my breath. What was I expecting? That he'd stay? That he'd see me for once? Minutes later, the door slammed open so hard the walls shook. Damon stormed in, his face twisted in anger. He grabbed me by the throat, pressing me against the wall. "Did you post those photos online?" he hissed. "You're spreading rumors that Celeste seduced her own brother-in-law? Do you hate her that much?" His grip tightened, and for a moment my vision blurred. I didn't even struggle. Because whether I was innocent or not, he'd already decided I was guilty. Eventually, his grip loosened. His tone changed. Softer now, almost pleading. "Celeste just had surgery. She can't handle stress right now. Go apologize to her, and we'll forget this ever happened." I met his eyes and said calmly, "All right." Something flickered in his expression. Confusion. Maybe even fear. The Aria he knew would have shouted, argued, cried. But I didn't have the strength anymore. I wasn't the same woman who begged for his love. I was just a dying one who had finally stopped hoping. I'm really sorry. My voice was barely a whisper. My head hung low, eyes fixed on the floor. Celeste's laughter cut through the air like glass shattering. She strutted closer, her heels echoing on the marble tiles. Sorry? For what? She said with a cruel smirk. Oh, right. For carrying my baby for me. I froze. Her grin widened, venom dripping from every word. Didn't Damon tell you? That child you nearly died giving birth to, he's mine. Mine and Damon's. You were just the surrogate. The perfect, obedient little incubator. My entire world went silent. The walls seemed to close in around me as her voice echoed, muffled, distant. Only someone as naive as you, she continued, circling me like a predator, would believe she was raising her own child. I should thank you, really. You did all the suffering for me. Something inside me cracked. My chest tightened painfully, and before I could stop it, a metallic taste filled my mouth. I coughed, and blood splattered across my hand. Celeste's eyes widened for a moment. Then she simply smirked and stepped back. Pathetic, she muttered. Damon burst into the room then, panic twisting his features. Ari! What happened? Are you hurt? He rushed to me, his hands trembling as he lifted my chin. I tried to speak, but another wave of blood escaped my lips. His eyes widened, fear written all over his face. Don't talk, please, just stay still. Tears stung my eyes. For a split second, I almost believed his worry was real. But then, Maggie barged in, waving an empty ketchup packet like a trophy. Oh, come on, Mrs. Reed. Using ketchup to fake an illness? Really? My body went cold. Ketchup? Before I could even explain, Damon's face twisted from concern to disgust. He stood up, shoving me away. So this was all just an act? You're unbelievable, Aria. His words hit harder than any slap. Then came Noah. My little boy. No, their boy. Storming forward with hatred in his eyes I'd never seen before. You liar. I hate you. You're not my mom. He kicked at my leg, small fists hitting my arms as tears blurred my vision. I couldn't even defend myself. I looked up at them. Damon, Celeste, Noah, and Maggie. Each face colder than the last. The home I once dreamed of felt like a stranger's house. Even my phone began buzzing nonstop. My parents' voices screaming through voice notes, cursing, blaming, calling me names I couldn't bear to hear. I realized then, I had nowhere left to go. Damon drew a deep breath, his tone final. I actually wanted to make things right. I planned a second wedding, something special. But you'll never change. You ruined every chance I gave you. So fine. Let's end this. Cece will be my bride instead. My lips trembled, but I managed a weak smile. All right. It was all I could say. I staggered toward the door, my vision dim. The evening air outside felt heavy, like the sky itself was pressing down on me. But before I could step off the porch, Damon ran after me. His hand caught mine, his tone suddenly soft. Aria, wait. You've been through a lot lately. You're just tired. Celeste and I, it's not what you think. I was only helping her recover. She's your sister after all. Sister! That word stabbed deeper than anything else. He brushed a strand of hair from my face and continued. Once your heart transplant's done next week, we'll go to Ireland. Get married there, just you and me. No divorces allowed. You wanted forever, right? He smiled faintly. You even had that list of 100 things you wanted to do with me. Let's start one today. How about a movie date? Before I could answer, he gently guided me into the passenger seat of his car. We drove in silence. The highway lights blurred into golden streaks as I stared out the window, wondering when everything had gone so wrong. Then his phone rang. He pulled over abruptly, tension in his jaw. Cece fainted, he muttered, already unlocking his door. They said it might be heart rejection. I need to go back now. You go ahead. I'll follow after. He didn't even meet my eyes. I stepped out of the car, clutching my chest. Damon, did you ever love me? Even for a moment? The only answer was the fading roar of his engine as he sped away. The silence that followed was unbearable. The tunnel around me blurred as my body swayed. I fell, the cold concrete meeting me hard. My vision dimmed, but in the distance, I thought I saw flashing lights. An ambulance, people shouting, hands reaching for me. A single tear rolled down my cheek and I smiled faintly. Maybe there were still kind people left in this world. Hours later, the hospital phones kept ringing. 43 calls. No answer. On the 44th, a weary doctor finally spoke when Damon picked up. "Mr. Reed," he said quietly. "I'm sorry to inform you. Aria passed away 10 minutes ago. Cardiac failure. She'd signed a full-body donation request before she died. Please send someone from her family to Johns Hopkins Hospital for verification." Silence. Then a soft click as the line disconnected. Damon stood frozen, the phone slipping from his fingers, as if the weight of the words itself had knocked the breath from him. What did they say?" he managed, voice far away. Only when the caller repeated the news did reality snap back into focus. He staggered, bracing his palm against the edge of a nearby table, knuckles whitening. Celeste, pale sheets still clinging to her, pushed herself upright. "Damon, what's wrong?" she asked, alarmed. When she reached him and brushed his sleeve, his rigid posture loosened a fraction. "Johns Hopkins called," he said at last, each syllable hollow. "They said, Aria is dead." For a heartbeat, Celeste only blinked. Then a short, incredulous laugh slipped from her lips. "Oh, please," she scoffed, wiping at her own cheeks as if brushing away a bothersome fly. "This has to be another one of her stunts. Remember the ketchup trick? She loves a spectacle. She probably hired someone to fake all this." Her voice took on a contrite note, and she folded into the role with practiced ease. "It's my fault," she sobbed suddenly, the tears performing perfectly. "I took the donor meant for her. I'm such a burden. I'm so sorry." Damon's rigid panic melted instantly into a different, softer alarm. He closed his arms around Celeste and rocked her as if his entire world could be mended by that motion alone. "Don't blame yourself," he whispered into her hair. "Just rest. Don't think about anything else." Footsteps hurried into the room. My parents, Gregory and Evelyn Langford, faces flushed from running. Evelyn's eyes widened as she took in Celeste's tear-streaked face. Gregory's expression curdled into anger the moment he heard the news repeated. "That wretched girl," he spat before he could stop himself, "always thinking of herself. Dead or not, she's never been anything but trouble. A jinx, through and through." Evelyn's voice rose shrill and venomous. "A jinx indeed! Even on the operating table, and she's still causing chaos. If she shows her face again, I'll make sure she understands her place." She banged a hand against the bedrail for emphasis, as if to punctuate the cruelty of her words. They had always called her a jinx. The nickname had been a curse that clung to Aria since infancy, the consequence of a careless decision their parents once made. Years ago, in a fever of superstition and spite, Gregory and Evelyn had taken their newborn daughters to a fortune teller. The old woman's voice had been a sentence. One child would bring luck. The other, misfortune. From then on, the ledger of love in the Langford household was unbalanced. Celeste's every cough was celebrated. Aria's triumphs were explanations for disaster. When she was a toddler, they left her by the country road until someone found her. Only when she was 10 did they bring her back under the same roof. But nothing changed. The welcome was only a new stage for their scorn. Every scrape Celeste had, every fever, every stumble was rearranged into proof that Aria had cursed them. The past, once sealed away, seeped into every present argument. Aria had hoped, naively, that marriage to Damon would give her a way out, a new family that would shield her. Instead, the same cycles replayed, whispered accusations, wrongful blame, and now, absence used as excuse. Evelyn smiled suddenly, a slick, calculating curl of her lips as she took Celeste's hand and slipped it into Damon's. "It's just as well you two never finalized your marriage certificate," she said, bright as a knife. "You're a perfect match. Successful, beautiful, and there's already a child linking you. Go tomorrow, register it. That will quiet the rumors." She clucked her tongue and added, "Finally, the family can be set right." No one told Aria, while she still breathed, that the child she had carried and bled for was never meant to be hers. They kept her in the dark with a cruelty that was both small and vast. Small because it required only omission, vast because it reshaped an entire life. Evelyn's eyes glinted then with a cold resolve. "As for that jinx," she murmured, not bothering to lower her voice, "we'll send her back to the countryside when she's well enough. If she continues to cause trouble, we'll consider other measures. Maybe a hospital that will teach her to behave." Damon, who once would have echoed anything his parents suggested, found his mouth tight. He swallowed, feeling something like nausea rise in his chest, an unfamiliar flutter of doubt and panic that did not sit well with the careful facade he maintained for the world. For the first time since Aria's illness had become the family story, a small, cold thought lodged in him. What if everything they believed was a lie? He looked down at Celeste's hand in his, and felt that panic ache, as if a small animal raced behind his ribs. The room hummed with certainty, with relief, with congratulatory murmurs, any shade of emotion that did not belong to Aria. Outside the hospital glass, the city moved on indifferent to the private verdict handed down within those curtains. Inside, the family stitched the seams of their future a little tighter, unaware of the small, breaking thing left behind. A woman who had been loved, betrayed, and then quietly erased. The room was quiet, save for the faint rhythm of the hospital monitor and the shallow breathing of the woman on the bed. Damon stood rigid beside them, his hands buried in his pockets, feeling the weight of every word that had been spoken. His mother's voice still echoed in his mind, sharp, unfeeling, final. He swallowed hard before saying, "Mom, Dad, Aria is your daughter too. How can you talk about her like she's a stranger?" His tone was calm, but his jaw was tight. "Even if she lied or made mistakes, haven't you ever wondered why? You've never really looked at her, not once. You ignored her pain until she had no one left to turn to. Don't you think that hurts?" A suffocating silence followed. Gregory shifted in his chair, pretending to check his watch. Evelyn pursed her lips, eyes cold and distant. Even Celeste lowered her gaze, pretending to be fragile again. Damon felt something twist painfully in his chest. He couldn't stay there another second. "I'll go get some hot water," he muttered, needing an excuse to breathe. The hospital corridor was washed in pale light, sterile and endless. His footsteps echoed faintly as he walked past a room where raised voices caught his attention. Out of instinct, he paused at the doorway. Inside, a white sheet covered a body on the bed. The air was thick with disinfectant and grief. A doctor stood by the bed, frowning deeply. "She was scheduled for surgery in 7 days," he said to the nurse beside him. Her heart gave out too soon. Whatever she went through must have pushed her beyond her limit. She didn't stand a chance. The nurse sighed. "I called her family so many times," she said quietly. "They either hung up or shouted at me to stop bothering them." The doctor's shoulders slumped. "Some people don't deserve children," he murmured, pulling the clipboard close. Damon's throat tightened. He didn't know who the patient was, but something about the scene made his stomach knot. His pulse quickened as a flash of memory came uninvited. Aria's pale face in the car headlights, her trembling voice asking him, "Did you ever love me, even a little?" He pressed a hand against his chest, trying to steady his breathing. No, it couldn't be her, it wouldn't be. Still, he couldn't ignore the growing dread that gnawed at him. He walked away before he could think too much, telling himself that Aria was probably sleeping, that she'd wake up to one of his messages soon. That night, he sent her a dozen texts. "I'll pick you up tomorrow. Don't be mad, okay? Let's talk when you're ready." No response. The small gray check marks stayed gray. 2 days later, while handling Celeste's discharge papers, Damon overheard 2 nurses chatting by the billing counter. Their tone was light at first, then softened with pity. "Did you hear about that girl they brought in from the highway tunnel?" one said, shaking her head. "Poor thing, barely in her 20s. They said she was alone when they found her." The other nurse sighed. "Yeah, she didn't make it. It's been 3 days now, and no one's come to claim her body. It's just so sad." Damon froze mid-step. His pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the rest of their words. No, it couldn't be. There had to be hundreds of patients, thousands of names. But deep down, he already knew. He walked toward them stiffly, every step heavier than the last. His voice came out hoarse and strained. "That girl from the tunnel," he said. "What was her name?" The nurses exchanged a glance. One of them hesitated, her fingers tightening around the chart she held. "Sir," she started carefully, "are you a relative?" "Just tell me the name." The younger nurse looked down, her voice trembling. "Her name was Aria." The clipboard slipped from Damon's grasp, papers scattering across the sterile floor. The sound of them hitting the tile echoed through the hall like a cruel confirmation. For the first time in his life, Damon felt what true silence sounded like, the kind that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. Her name struck him like a lightning bolt, splitting through his chest. Damon froze where he stood, every muscle locking tight. Then, as if his body couldn't contain the shock, he shouted hoarsely, No, this can't be happening." He paced the room like a storm trapped inside a man, his mind scrambling for an explanation. There are hundreds of people with that name. It has to be someone else. It has to be. But his gut twisted with dread. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Without another thought, he grabbed his keys and bolted out of the house. His car roared down the street, tires screeching as he turned corners too sharply. All he could think about was her. Aria. By the time he reached home, the sun was barely peeking through the clouds, a dull gray light spilling into the narrow hallway. He stopped at the utility room door, the small space she'd turned into her refuge whenever they fought. He knocked softly. "Ari? It's me." His voice wavered, but he tried to sound calm. "I know you're still upset about what happened in the tunnel. You're right. I shouldn't have left you there. But Cece needed help that day, and I didn't have time to think." He rested his forehead against the door, guilt burning behind his eyes. "Please, don't stay mad at me. Once your surgery's done, we'll do all those silly things you always talked about. Every single one of them. Just like you said, 100 memories before we're old. Deal?" He waited for an answer. Silence. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the air. Damon's heartbeat pounded louder. Normally, just the sound of his voice was enough. Aria could never stay angry for long. She would always peek through the door, eyes soft with forgiveness. But this time, nothing. A chill swept down his spine. He twisted the knob, locked. "Aria?" he called again, louder. Still nothing. His patience snapped. He kicked the door open. The wooden frame splintered, swinging wide, revealing an empty room. Her phone was lying on the bed. The screen cracked, a faint glow still flickering. Damon's throat tightened. Panic rose in his chest like a tide he couldn't stop. He snatched his phone and called his assistant. "Find out where my wife's been for the past few days," he ordered sharply. There was a confused pause on the other end. "Sir, hasn't Mrs. Reed been in the hospital? You've been visiting her every day." His heart sank. Hospital? He hadn't been there for days. Not since... "Not Cece," Damon snapped, his voice breaking. "I'm talking about Aria." For a moment, everything inside him went quiet. Then he hung up, grabbed his keys again, and rushed toward the door, determined to drive to the Langford estate and find her himself. But before he could reach the handle, the door swung open. "Aria," he asked breathlessly, hope flashing in his eyes. It wasn't her. Evelyn stepped in, holding a basket filled with dried herbs and expensive supplements. Her eyes widened at his frantic expression. Damon? What's wrong? Did something happen? He turned away, swallowing hard. Where's Aria? Evelyn frowned. At home, isn't she? Why are you acting like she's disappeared? I just came to drop these off for Cece. She needs nourishment after surgery. She handed the basket to Maggie, the housemaid, and sighed. These herbs are rare. Please handle them carefully. I'm planning to make chicken soup. Cece needs it for her recovery. Before she could say another word, a sudden crash came from the kitchen. Maggie had dropped the pot. Scalding soup splattered across the tiles, steam rising from the floor. Maggie! Evelyn snapped. What on earth are you doing? Do you know how much those herbs cost? You couldn't afford them in 10 years of wages. Be careful next time, or I'll deduct it from your pay. But Maggie wasn't listening. She just stared at the spilled soup, her hands trembling violently. Her mind flashed back to that night. Aria, punished and starved, curled up in the corner of this very kitchen, her body shaking from cold and hunger. The way she coughed, harsh, wet, painful, and the bright streak of blood that hit the sink. Since then, Maggie hadn't slept properly. Every night she dreamt of Aria's thin, ghostly figure standing at the end of her bed, whispering in a broken voice, "Why did you treat me like this too?" Evelyn's angry words sounded distant now. Maggie bent down quickly to clean the mess, blinking back tears. Staying busy was easier than remembering. Then the front door burst open. Damon's assistant stood there, pale as a sheet, chest heaving from running. "Mr. Reed," he said, his voice trembling. I just got the report." Damon turned sharply. "What report?" The assistant swallowed hard. "Mrs. Reed. Aria. She passed away. 3 days ago." The thermos slipped from Evelyn's hands, shattering on the floor. Scalding broth splashed across her arms, but she didn't feel a thing. Her vision blurred as she grabbed the assistant by the collar, shouting, "Say that again! What did you just say?" Time seemed to freeze. The only sound in the room was the slow dripping of soup on tile, and the faint echo of Aria's name still hanging in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. "It's true, sir." The assistant's voice shook as if each word cut through his throat. "Mrs. Reed's body. She's in the morgue at Johns Hopkins Hospital." Cold sweat rolled down his temples, and his trembling hand struggled to hold the folder he carried. Evelyn's face drained of color. Her body swayed once, twice. Then her knees buckled, and she collapsed. Damon didn't even reach out to catch her. He stood frozen, eyes wide and unblinking, like a man who'd just watched his world crumble to ash. The silence that followed was unbearable. The morgue smelled faintly of antiseptic and iron. Fluorescent lights flickered above, throwing pale reflections across steel tables. A single figure lay in the center, draped beneath a white sheet. Gregory and Evelyn burst through the doors, their footsteps echoing sharply against the tiled floor. But when they neared the body, they hesitated. Neither dared move first. Finally, Evelyn's shaking hand reached for the edge of the sheet. She paused, took a breath that broke halfway, and pulled it back. Her scream pierced the sterile air. Aria's face was still and peaceful, her skin pale as porcelain. A faint line of dried tears traced down her cheek, as though even in her final moments, her heart had refused to stop longing. Evelyn fell to her knees beside the table, clutching her daughter's cold hand. "No, no, not my baby. Not our Aria." Her sobs echoed off the cold walls. "How could this happen? How could you leave us like this? What are we supposed to do now?" Gregory turned his face away, jaw clenched hard enough to draw blood. Then a smaller voice broke through the chaos. Noah stumbled forward, tears streaking down his young face. He gripped Aria's lifeless hand with both of his. "Mom, please wake up. I promise I'll be good this time. I won't call Celeste Mom anymore. I'll do my chores, I'll study, I'll do anything, just please. Please come back." He shook her hand gently, but her fingers stayed cold and unmoving. His wails filled the room, blending with Evelyn's cries until it sounded like grief itself was alive and screaming. Gregory suddenly turned toward Damon, rage replacing sorrow. He lunged forward, striking him hard across the face. "You did this!" Gregory roared. "You left her in that tunnel. If you'd gone back, if you'd saved her, she'd still be here." Damon didn't fight back. The blow sent him stumbling, but he didn't lift a hand to defend himself. His expression was hollow, eyes glazed over. Because deep down, he knew Gregory wasn't wrong. Moments later, the door opened again. A man in a white coat entered, the doctor in charge of Aria's case. He carried a folder thick with papers and grief etched into his features. "I assume you're her family," he said stiffly. "These are her records, and Celeste's." He glanced at Damon, then at Evelyn and Gregory. "A month ago, we confirmed Aria had late-stage heart failure. She needed a transplant immediately. When we found a compatible donor, it was a miracle, one that could have saved her." The doctor's voice hardened. "But instead of letting her have it, you authorized the procedure for Celeste Langford, a perfectly healthy woman. We objected, every one of us. But Aria, she was the one who insisted. She said she wanted her sister to live." He slammed the folder on the metal table. "She died because of that decision, because you all let her believe she was less deserving of life." Evelyn covered her mouth, gasping. "No, that's not true," but the doctor wasn't listening anymore. He turned and left, his voice echoing in the corridor behind him. "You'd better live with that choice." The room fell silent again. No one moved. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to fade away, as though the world itself held its breath. Then the assistant rushed back in, clutching a tablet. His expression was pale and grim. "Mr. Reed," he said softly, "you need to see this." He handed over the device, and Damon hesitated before pressing play. The first video showed Celeste whispering something to a nurse. Then another clip. Aria, cornered and humiliated, enduring yet another cruel setup. The next footage was worse. Evelyn and Gregory shouting at Aria, their faces twisted with anger, her silent tears falling as she took every insult in silence. Then, static. The video cut off abruptly. Damon's hand trembled around the tablet. His heart felt like it was tearing apart piece by piece. His nails dug into his palms, drawing blood, but he didn't notice. The weight of guilt crushed him. Every cruel word he'd said, every moment he'd turned away, came rushing back like shards of glass slicing through his chest. When he finally looked up, his eyes were full of something dark and dangerous, a fury colder than grief. Gregory and Evelyn flinched under his gaze. The morgue doors burst open again. Celeste stood there, pale from recovery, dressed in a hospital gown that made her look fragile and innocent. Her eyes glistened, her voice trembling perfectly. "Mom? Dad? I just heard. Is it true? Is Aria really gone?" She stepped closer, putting a hand over her heart. "Please don't be sad. You still have me. I'll take care of you both. I promise I'll never leave." Her soft tone might have fooled anyone else, but not now. Gregory and Evelyn stared at her, realization dawning like a cold shadow. For years they'd believed Celeste was the kind one, the gentle one. But now, faced with her calm smile while their real daughter lay dead in front of them, a terrible chill crawled down their spines. The truth, long buried under deceit, had finally clawed its way to the surface. Gregory's face twisted with something like fury and shame. His hand shot out before he could stop himself. The sound of the slap cut through the room, a hard, final punctuation. Celeste's head snapped to the side. For a heartbeat, she looked stunned. Her perfect composure cracked. "Dad? You hit me?" Her voice trembled with disbelief more than pain. "Yes." Gregory's voice was low and gone rough. "I hit you because you made a mockery of decency. You spent years setting her up, ruining her, and then you took the thing that could have saved her life." He leaned forward, fingers digging into the edge of the stainless steel table, as if he could steady himself with rage. "Do you have any idea what you did to our daughter?" Celeste's reaction was a studied shrug that didn't reach her eyes. "So now you all finally see?" she said, venom laced in every syllable. "You blame me because it's convenient. But don't pretend you were saints. You pushed her away. You sat back while she suffered." She turned toward the family, voice climbing. "It was your cruelty that made her surrender everything. You all share the blame." Noah, still small, bewildered, holding pieces of grief he couldn't name, staggered forward. "You killed my mom," he cried, shoving himself through the adults. He swung at Celeste with a childish fury born from loss. "You're evil." Celeste laughed, a hard, brittle sound, and gave the boy a contemptuous shove that sent him stumbling. His cry of pain broke the air like glass. She stepped back, chin raised, as if daring anyone to stop her. "Look properly," she spat. "I'm the one who's loved him. I'm the one who carried him. You'll learn to accept that." Her words were a spark in dry tinder. Gregory's color drained, then flared. Evelyn's hands trembled. Damon, already raw with shock and dawning guilt, snapped. He surged forward with a speed that came from panic rather than reason, and wrapped both hands around Celeste's throat. "Enough," he growled, voice rough as stone. "How can you stand there and lie when she's gone?" For a long second his grip tightened, and Celeste's face reddened, eyes wide but still daring. "Choke me if you must," she mocked through clenched teeth. "Kill me, and see if she returns. Your theatrics mean nothing." Something in Damon broke then. Not purely rage, not purely grief, but a wild, violent mixture of both. He let go as if burned, stumbling backward. He looked at her with a hatred so keen it seemed to cut the air. He could have strangled her. Instead, he chose something worse. A promise. "You'll spend the rest of your life making up for this," he hissed. "Night after night, regret will be your companion. I'll see to it." Celeste's lips curled into a smile that offered no warmth. "Regret? From you?" she said, amusement edged with contempt. "You were the one who swore you'd marry her, who spoke about a future you never meant to keep. You called her a burden, wished her dead, and now you scold me for taking advantage of your empty promises." Her voice carried through the room like ice. One by one she named every fault she could throw at them. Their blindness, their superstitions, the fortune teller that had poisoned their decisions, even their small cruelties folded into daily life. Each accusation landed like a stone. For a moment the air seemed to still. Then, almost as if the house itself had decided the day of reckoning had come, Gregory doubled over with a strangled sound. A hot wetness spread across his lips. He coughed, a raw, choking noise, and toppled backward onto the tile. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth as she too staggered and then crumpled, coughing violently. Panic erupted. People rushed in from the corridor. Nurses and staff descended, calling for help. Damon dropped to his knees beside the fallen pair, but his face had gone hard and distant. The despair in him sharpened into something else, an animal resolve. He hauled Celeste up by the arm with a force that shocked everyone watching and dragged her toward the exit. Her protests were a harsh, high noise, indignant and incredulous. "You won't make me suffer alone," Damon said, voice thin as a blade. "I won't let you sleep peacefully. Every day you'll remember what you took. I'll make sure your nights are full of the same fear she knew. Only this time it will be you who cannot stop the pain." Outside, the corridor lights hummed. Celeste's heels clicked on the floor, high and steady at first, then faltering as Damon's grip tightened. She spat words of defiance at him. Taunts, accusations that he was broken, that he was weak. But in them there was also a tremor, a note of fear. People watched them go, some with pity, some with a relieved satisfaction, and others with the hush of something that had waited a long time for justice or revenge. In the sterile hospital air, The echo of Aria's name lingered, and the wound it had left opened into a place no easy words could heal. That night, Damon finally came clean. He opened his laptop with trembling hands, logged into his verified account, and typed out a long public confession. The post detailed every sin: the affair, the betrayal, the lies, and the part he played in Aria's death. Within minutes, his words spread like wildfire. Hashtags exploded across every social platform. Read group scandal, CEO confession, affair with sister-in-law. People couldn't look away. Screens were filled with outrage. Comment sections flooded with curses, sympathy for Aria, and demands for justice. He destroyed his wife for lust, and she lost her life for love. Celeste was her sister. Who does that? No punishment will ever be enough for people like them. Someone even unearthed an old video showing Aria quietly enduring abuse in the Langford household. The clips were gut-wrenching. A young woman flinching as harsh words rained down on her, her eyes lifeless, her spirit broken. Public fury intensified. The Reed name, once synonymous with wealth and power, became a curse overnight. Gregory and Evelyn, after learning the truth and seeing the storm of online hatred, both suffered strokes within hours of each other. They ended up confined to hospital beds, unable to move or speak clearly. One evening, as the TV in their hospital room replayed the news, tears rolled down their cheeks. Their lips trembled as they tried to form words, and all that came out were choked syllables. "We're sorry," but apologies no longer mattered. The damage was already carved deep. Meanwhile, Celeste's mind began to unravel. She screamed at invisible figures, called out Aria's name in the middle of the night, and smashed every mirror she saw, unable to face her reflection. When Damon came to see her, he no longer looked like the man she once knew. His face was pale, his expression stone cold. He tilted her chin up, his voice sharp and emotionless. "You'll stay in that hospital until you learn what pain really is. The same pain she lived through every day." The doctors standing nearby nodded politely. "Mr. Reed, don't worry. We'll take excellent care of Ms. Langford." Celeste's eyes widened in terror. "No, you can't do this to me, Damon." Before anyone could react, she grabbed a porcelain vase from the table and hurled it against the wall, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. She lunged at him, clutching his suit. "I'm Noah's real mother. You can't take him from me." Damon looked at her, but there was no warmth left in his eyes. Only a cold, hollow emptiness. "You lost that right the day you killed her." With a wave of his hand, the staff restrained her. She kicked, screamed, and bit one of the orderlies hard enough to draw blood, but it didn't matter. They dragged her away as she howled. "I hate you, Damon, I hate you!" Then silence. The once grand Reed mansion now felt haunted, every hallway echoing with the ghosts of regret. Damon stood in the middle of the wreckage, surrounded by overturned furniture and shards of broken glass. His vision blurred as he remembered Aria's gentle smile, the way she used to hum softly while tending the garden. He reached out as if she were still there, but his hand only touched cold air. For the first time, Damon broke. He sank to the floor, burying his face in his hands, his sobs echoing through the empty house. Days later, Reed Group collapsed under the weight of scandal. Investors fled, lawsuits piled up. In just a week, the empire he built crumbled to dust. One overcast afternoon, Damon walked alone to the cemetery carrying a small bouquet of white jasmine, Aria's favorite flower. He knelt by her tombstone, tracing her name over and over as tears fell onto the carved letters. "Aria," he whispered, voice trembling. "I was a fool. I let you die thinking no one loved you. I'm sorry." The wind rustled through the trees, almost like a sigh. He lifted his head, eyes swollen from crying. "If we meet again in another life, would you look at me one last time? Would you forgive me?" A chilling calm came over him. From his coat, he pulled out a small blade, the same one he'd carried since her funeral. Without hesitation, he pressed it against his wrist. Scarlet blood flowed freely, dripping onto the grass, seeping into the soil beneath her stone. His voice, barely a whisper now, trembled through the cold air. "Aria, I'm coming to find you." The world blurred around him, and for a fleeting moment, he swore he saw her standing there again, smiling faintly, bathed in soft light. Then everything faded to black,